Hey everyone, it's Stevie Johnson, and I decided to do my research project on how the institution of slavery truly affected the Baptist denomination and how it caused the ultimate split between the two opposing sides. So my thesis statement is the institution of slavery greatly affected the relationship between Northern and Southern Baptists and ultimately caused the two sides to split. As we know, slavery was such a big factor in the Southern culture that they truly just could not see their life without it, and that included Baptist, God-fearing Southerners. And though that may be shocking, they had many ways to justify their reason for slavery, as we will see in the presentation. A little bit of background information on the Baptist denomination and its separation because of slavery. The Baptist religion was originally founded in England but was brought to America in the 17th century, and it has stayed predominantly in the South. Of the over 500,000 Baptists in America, over half were living in the South during this time, and it just really left a deep impression in the Southern culture. And they shared the same religion, but they did not share the same views on slavery, and this is what ultimately led them to disbanding and creating two separate denominations. Separation of the denomination. Baptists were very big into mission work and still are known for their foreign mission work and their mission works in the state. And what would happen was every single time that the Baptists got together to discuss their mission work, it always ended up being a feud over the issue of slavery and who was right and who was wrong. And this really ultimately caused the split, and that began in the 1830s when abolitionists began pressing their agenda and their moral disclosure of society within the Baptist conventions and the Baptist meetings, which truly upset the Southern Baptists, which again were predominantly in the South. In 1840, the General Convention, that they were trying to seek a middle ground and try to just say that the issue of slavery did not need to be brought up within meetings at all. And obviously this was not going to work, especially with the hard abolitionists that were in the North. These Baptists truly believed that the slaves deserved their freedom and were going to fight for it no matter what their denomination was saying. Abolitionists disapproved and created their own mission organizations in 1844. So this is where we begin to see the split, the actual split of the denominations. That same year, Georgia Baptist Convention, as well as the Alabama State Convention, they put forth missionary volunteers to try and get into these organizations, to work for these organizations, but they were ultimately shut down and were not given the positions in the Baptist Convention because they were Southern slave owners. So this just showed how the North was influencing the South by not allowing slave-holding Southern Baptists to join their organizations. Soon enough, though, the two large mission organizations, the Home Society Mission and the General Convention, became strictly North organizations for the Baptists. And so in 1845, at the request of the Virginia Baptist Foreign Mission Society, the Southern Baptist Convention was formed, as many of us still know that to be running today, and was formed within the gathering of 293 delegates in Augusta, Georgia. And this is where we finally see the split between the denomination. Though it may seem like the South disbanded for issues over missions, that obviously is only half the story, even though that is partly true because they could not figure out how to get missions successfully ran because of the issue of slavery. We all know that the South eventually broke off because of the issue of slavery and wanting to keep slavery within the Southern culture. They felt that they could not live without it, really. And Overall, the South created the new denomination on maintaining slaves in the midst of sponsoring foreign missions. The print culture was a big impact on the South, especially because so many Baptists had newspaper organizations that printed Baptist-influenced newspapers to the citizens. And if evangelicals created this print culture to, again, maintain and defend slavery and show that they were truly right and correct in their view of slavery and how it dealt with Scripture and God's will. They published in favor of colonization society, which meant that they wanted to remove any freed blacks from the society so that they would not influence the slave culture and would not influence them and their ideology of wanting to be free or not wanting to be free. And David Shaver became the associate editor to the Religious Herald. He said that freed blacks and white factory workers were honestly worse off than those that were enslaved. He said that they lived worse lives and that they truly had no meaning to their lives compared to those that were in slavery. Just again, trying to defend the Southern culture. Meredith was the editor of the Biblical Recorder and used Scripture to justify slavery as it offered no condemnation of the practice in the Bible. So a lot of people like to say that the Bible showed that it never condemned slavery, and many people base their argument of slavery off of that. Thornton Stringfellow was a very influential Southern evangelicist and was Baptist and truly believed that slavery was justified through the Bible. He said that God is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and his word does not change, and for that reason slavery should not change. He argues that sin is something in which God in his own words makes known to be wrong. So if God never said in the Bible that slavery is wrong, then how can it be wrong? He uses certain biblical stories of Abraham and Job and says God himself gave the authority to man to own slaves and govern them, no matter how severe it may be. So in his defense, he's saying that man is allowed to own slavery because men in the past did own slaves in the Bible, and they can treat them however they wish because they are man's property. He supported the separation of Southern Baptist Church from the North. He really wanted to make sure that this happened because ultimately the North was slowing their agenda down. And I really think the North harping on them about slavery just kind of made Southern Baptists fed up. Richard Furman was another Southern evangelicist who was also Baptist, and he said that the right to own slaves is clearly written and established in the Scripture. Again, going back to Scripture and showing that because there were slaves during this time, that it must be okay to have them in America. Servitude is consistent with happiness, so purchasing slaves from Africa saves their life. He truly believed that slaves were much happier in the state they were as slaves than they were in Africa, and masters were honestly doing them a justice in obtaining them as slaves. Providing slaves with masters gives them the opportunity to salvation. So he believed that slaves would not have the opportunity to find God in any other way of life other than having a master. So scriptural right of masters to demand and receive reasonable service and correct them for neglect of duty. So Richard also believed that the master had the right to the slave and could do whatever they want. And again, they all defend this using the Bible. And it's just crazy to see that the North and the South both were using the same Bible, yet they had different views of the way they interpreted it. So Henry L. Morehouse was a Northern Baptist who fought against the institution of slavery, and he wants to see all slaves free, calling for the South to follow the District of Columbia, because at that time the District of Columbia had gotten rid of slavery. And he calls for missions in the southern states to spread the Northern Baptist message. He's tired of hearing the Southern message and really is advocating for the Northern message to be spread. He believes that the traits of humanity have been effaced completely, and slaves do not have the self-reliance And they have really no idea what even the economy is. And he's just saying that this is just so crazy that they are human beings who don't even have the simplest knowledge of how society even works, and that this truly needed to be changed. He felt that there was divine providence was about to break the chains of the enslaved millions and furnish an unobstructed entrance for the gospel. So he truly believed that there was God was going to step in and show that the North was right in their agenda. So Francis Wayland was also another Northern Baptist who truly fought for the rights of slaves, believing that he initially believed in a unified denomination, but after further thought, he changed his mind, saying that they definitely needed to be separated for reasons that they could not come to agree and so on. He claims they need to separate because organizations are complicated and interfering with each other. He really cared about the missions and really wanted to see them separate so that the Northern Baptists could continue on with their work in the missions, and that each church needed to be its own church and that they needed to do their own works. And he kind of just wanted to separate himself from the South in general and didn't want to be associated with them and rather be seen for the good works of his church and his organizations. Okay, so just to recap, Baptist anti-slavery arguments. The North turned slavery from a social problem into a moral sin. They could not bear associating themselves with Southern Baptists who defended slavery. And they also embraced abolitionism and human equality as universal, righteous values worthy of national implementation, and believed that there needed to be bodily freedom within the slavery community. And the Baptist pro-slavery arguments, they wanted to maintain a hierarchical social order in the South and were fearful of what would happen to them once they were free. They just really did not know where slaves would go, and they thought that they were the only ones that could be in control of them, as they had been for so many years. They believed that slaves needed their masters in order to live and survive, and they also believed that the institution of slavery was willed and ordained by God through the Bible, which they showed through many times through Scripture, trying to prove their point. I just kind of wanted to end with a quote showing the true impact of the split of these denominations over slavery. And Charles Sinder, his quote says, "The division of the churches was something more than an ecclesiastical event. It was a rupturing of one of the greatest cohesive forces in America." So as we learned through this class, religion was such a huge influence on the creation and the structure of this nation. And he believed that once these churches began to break off and create their own denominations and split, especially churches like the Methodist, Baptist, and Presbyterian, they were such big denominations, and we see these splits, and we thought that this is what was holding the country together, but ultimately they separated, and it's just really truly sad to see something like this over the institution of slavery, the South feeling like they had to have it in order to survive. That's about it. These are the list of my sources, and I really hope you enjoyed it, and I had a great time during this class. Thanks, everyone.